Hello. So today on Mind Matters with Kay, we have special guest Dr. Justice Figueroa. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Justice Figueroa. I am a certified youth mentor, a youth crisis specialist, former correctional assessment shift supervisor, social activist, community activist, among other hats that I wear.
Okay. All right. So that means that this conversation will be very insightful because you wear so many hats. So you'll be able to give us various perspectives. So our topic today
Absolutely.
is um, life after incarceration and the mental health consequences. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first and foremost, I think that a lot of people are unaware, particularly the general public, is unaware of the mental health aspects of incarceration, specifically long-term incarceration. So, any incarceration can have mental health ramifications, but there's an emphasis put on long-term offenders. Long-term offenders are people who do 10 years plus. You're considered a long-term offender. Being incarcerated for that period of time, a lot of people deal with a lot of traumatic experiences while incarcerated. The mental health aspects of incarceration, everything from the violence that you see in institutions, um, from the inmates upon other inmates, the violence from the guards, the officers towards inmates, um, just being locked down 23-hour. A lot of prisons are 23-hour lockdown. You get 1 hour for recreation, the shower, and stuff like that. But most of them have 23-hour lockdown. So, most oftentimes you in a 9 by 11 cell, for 23 hours a day, there's going to be mental health ramifications just associated with that in itself. You know what I'm saying? There's a
Absolutely.
high component of inmates that are on medication to keep them sedated because a lot of people don't want to deal with the reality of incarceration. They don't want to deal with the reality of being away from loved ones in society. A lot of them don't want to deal with the reality of the prison culture because within the prison walls is a subculture. It's not like society. Prison has its own culture. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't want to deal with the reality of what's going on behind those walls. Or may have long prison sentences, 25 years, 30 years, life, and facing the possibility that they may spend the rest of their life incarcerated. So a lot of them would rather be sedated on some type of medication rather than face that reality. And excuse me.
So is
And
that an option? I didn't think that they were able to really get. There's like
yeah,
a
well,
lag
yeah.
here. I
Well, what
wasn't
happens
trying to put.
is right. Well, what happens is a lot of guys will voluntarily, go and seek medical attention, saying that they can't cope or they dealing with this, they dealing with that because they want to be sedated. They don't want to deal with the reality. And then some guys are forced on it because of their behavior from acting out, fighting the officers, acting crazy, stabbing other inmates, doing all kind of crazy stuff. And they sedate them, involuntarily. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause
But
you have had
but
some
here's the
cases.
thing. But here's the thing. I don't really know what they expect when you have a precinct of males, right, who are all locked down in cages for 23 hours a day with no real
Yes,
rec time. Sometimes they're locked down for 24 hours, depending on what's going
yes,
on. Sometimes they're short staffed. Sometimes it's
yes,
due to another inmate or whatever the case may be. But when you're caging human beings, not saying that some people don't deserve to be in jail, right? But they're still human beings. So that doesn't mean to lock them down for 23 hours and let them out for 1 hour, which consists of showering, rec, some type of human interaction. That's why they mentally that being in a cell, and sometimes they even have roommates. So you locked in this tiny
absolutely.
cell.
Well, this is why we're talking about this particular issue, and this is why this speaks to the amount of violence that you see that takes place in correctional facilities. This is why guys are so volatile. And this is
Yeah.
why you see a lot of guys that return back into society, because it has reintegration ramifications. The mental health. A lot of people have been deemed criminally insane when they should be
Right.
mentally, they got mental health issues. They're really not criminally insane. They're just dealing with mental health issues. But that's the system's way of labeling them as being criminally insane to justify long-term incarceration, to justify mass incarceration. They labeling people as being criminally insane. But these guys aren't receiving the help that they need, the mental health aspect. A lot of the
Right.
programs they used to have in the institutions, they've taken those programs out. So here it is. You can have a guy that gets incarcerated and has a 10, 15, 20-year sentence, and he basically could sit in his cell for 10, 15, 20 years and do absolutely nothing to help himself. Get no mental health counseling, get to talk to
Yeah.
nobody, no one-on-one group sessions. One-on-one sessions, no group sessions. You don't have to say nothing to nobody. He could just sit there for 15 years in his cell and do absolutely nothing. And then when it's time for him to get released, he gets set back into society and get freed. And then he's back out here and he's dealing with a whole plethora of mental health issues, substance abuse issues, because believe me, there's more drugs in prisons than there is on the streets. Access to drugs in prison system is readily available, just like on any street corner in society. So a lot of them are coming home
Right.
with substance abuse, mental health issues. A lot of them are coming home with psychological issues. A lot of them are coming home with anger. A lot of them are depressed. A lot of them have been abandoned. They're dealing with separation anxiety. Their families have ran out on them and left them. A lot of them have lost spouses. Their wives and husbands that left them, cheating on them, divorced them while they was incarcerated. And then this person sits there for 10, 15, 20 years. And then when his days to be released is up, you just, cut him a little check, give him a garbage bag with his belongings, and just set him off in society. You're
Set
setting
them
him
right
up for
out.
failure.
Yeah.
This guy is a
Yeah.
ticking time
And like
bomb.
you
It's only a matter of time.
right. And like you said, a
He,
lot of them are dealing with the PTSD of being incarcerated, right? Being caged
yes,
in. And every situation that you just mentioned, these are all psychological issues that they have to try to um, uh, basically deal with while they're encaged, right? Around other people who have different psychological issues, and trying to process the fact that number one, that they are there and they have to be told when to eat, sleep, and shit, right? They can't get out of this little cell. They can't wash regularly. The food that they are served looks like slop, right?
absolutely.
And again, sometimes, depending on what you're in there for, a lot of your friends are no longer. You're literally in there by yourself and you're dealing with all this psychologically. And there's people they tend to gain a increased level of hostility, like depression, you mentioned suicide. Their psychological they become psychologically deteriorated, right? So
Let me
there
just mention,
needs to be program.
very high suicide rates for both inmates and officers. Because let me just say this, let me just touch on this. The
Yes.
mental health component of incarceration doesn't only affect the incarcerated individuals. The people that work in these facilities
Oh,
are dealing with a lot of the same mental health issues that the incarcerated individuals. Let me tell you something. Correctional facility, correctional officers, they work a lot of mandatory overtime 16-hour shifts. While you're
right.
in that facility for your shift or your double shift, it's almost as if you're incarcerated just like the inmates. You can't go where you want to go. You can't leave out. You gotta. So a lot of them deal with a lot of suicide, depression. They have very high divorce rates. A lot of their spouses cheat on them and step out on them because they know when you're locked into that 16-hour shift, there's no way you're getting out of that. You're not coming home. So for 16 hours, your spouse has the freedom to play. He's in that prison. He working. He went in at 3. He ain't getting out till 7 in the morning. So you have a lot of divorce. You have high rates of separation. You have a lot of officers that go home and kill their spouse, gun them down, shoot them to death. So mental health in the correctional institutions affects everyone, you know, equally the same, because a lot of the officers feel the same type of stress and anxiety as the inmates do while they're in that facility. You know, so this mental health
Right.
thing
And
is far reaching.
right. And here's the thing. So the guest that I had last week, we said the same thing. Like mental health affects everyone, whether directly or indirectly. And I think
Right.
that people don't look at both sides of the fence. Like you said, it's the inmates who are enduring these situations, these circumstances, and it's also the people who are supervising them, the correctional officers. And it's funny because I used to want to be a correctional officer like 15 years ago. And like when I watch certain shows, like yeah, for real, like me, I'm like 5'2". There's nothing I
Right.
can do if they start a riot. Okay. Nothing. But I look at certain shows and I see the things that they have to endure. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine because again, they're still exposed to the fighting. They're still seeing people being stabbed up and set up and all types of things. And it's just because it's a job, it doesn't excuse you from being human and seeing these things and being exposed to these things and not having proper ramifications in place to make sure you're processing this stuff. So what they do, they go home, they take it out on their family, they kill their
Absolutely.
spouse, they're not
Or they
happy.
reoffend. They
You know what I
reoffend.
mean?
The average person, after being released from incarceration, reoffends within 2 years. They
You
reoffend
know
within
why?
2 years.
Because they don't know how to this because they don't know how to deal with society. They, like you said, they didn't have
Right.
any help inside. They're sent
Right.
outside with a check and a bag. And now it's, time done passed, depending on how long they've been in jail. Society's different. They don't know how to
Absolutely.
they don't know how to tread in society. They weren't prepared for that. It went from one drastic measure to the other. There was no in between for them. There was no guidance.
It's
There
like
was
a
no
it's like a it's
resources.
like a culture. It's like a culture shock, because I told you inside the prison it's a subculture, and society is different. In prison, everything slows down. In society, everything is
Yes,
moving fast again. In prison, you
yes,
got no
yes.
responsibilities. You got to pay no bills. You got to pay no rent. You ain't got to pay no insurance. You don't got to be responsible for nothing. But when you come home, shortly after coming home, a lot of families, a lot of women, a lot of men put pressure on their incarcerated family member to start being productive again, to start producing. That's why a lot of people come home and reoffend, because they trying to get back in the groove of paying bills, because rent is due. You got to find somewhere to stay. You need a roof over your head. Child support is on your back. Your baby moms is on your back. Your kids are on
And
your
not
back.
to,
Kids need this.
and not to mention, no place out here is rushing to hire a criminal, right? Although this person paid their debt to society, right, and have served their time, getting out of prison, no facility, not facility, but no employer is really rushing to hire a person who just came home from jail. So really, how are we setting them up? You know what I mean? Like how do they provide in society with a record? There needs to be
Well, no,
programs in
no.
place
Let
so
me
they
tell you what the
can
issue
get
is.
a job.
No, let me tell you what the issue is. The issue isn't in a job within itself, because let me just clarify that these restrictions on formerly incarcerated people being hired at a lot of jobs have decreased dramatically over the years. There are a lot of companies that hire felons now. You got ShopRite, you got Home Depot, you got Lowe's, you got it's a whole plethora of Whole Foods. It's a whole plethora of places now, because a lot of them get tax write-off and bonds and stuff like that from the state and the government to hire ex-felons. So the doors of opportunity has opened up greatly for ex-felons, even voting. There was a time, even in New Jersey, if you was on parole or probation, you couldn't vote. They did away with all of that now. So ex-felons can vote just like
Okay,
any other person. So a lot
that's
of
good to
doors of
know.
opportunity have opened. What hasn't opened and still remains shut is allowing them to be a part of the greater fabric of society, to get the good jobs, the pension jobs, the good. They could get the retail jobs, they can get the Walmart, they could get the Kohl's, they could get the ShopRite, but the jobs like fireman, you know what I'm saying, police officer, and stuff like that, they are barred from those type of jobs. See, that's the doors that need to be knocked down, because you have a person that was a young kid that committed an offense at 17 years old, 16, 17 years old, went to prison for 20, 25 years, served the entire sentence, come home in their 40s, mid 40s. They done changed their life around. They educated themselves, got a GED, went to college, got a college degree, it was an exemplary inmate, got no charges while they was incarcerated, no offenses, and they come home and they a whole new different person. This person deserves an opportunity to become a part of the fabric of society again with no restrictions. Absolutely. How are you holding something against him that he did 25, 30 years ago? And that has to follow him for the rest of his life?
And that he just paid for. He paid his debt. He did his 25 years. So it's like double jeopardy.
You being punished twice.
Exactly. Yep.
But let me say this, Sister Kim. Another thing that's very traumatizing to the mental health of incarceration, I think that is humiliating, is the privacy, the lack of privacy in institutions, where all of the men take showers together. There's no personal private showers. You step in the shower, it may be 10, 15, 20 other guys in there, maybe more sometime, all showering together. And a lot of facilities, the bathroom, the toilet bowl is right by the phone. So you taking a dump while a dude on the phone talking to his family. Yeah, and a lot of county jails and stuff like that. Yeah, the phones are right above or next to the toilet bowls. So a guy sitting there taking a shit, you on the phone talking to your wife, and you can smell his ass. So there's no privacy in institutions. Let me give you another example that's traumatizing not only to the inmate population, but the officers, the male officers. The visitation program. Once the visitation program is completed, a lot of times it may have been 300 guys, 200 guys on visit that day. Once the visit program is completed and all the family members leave, or they put them in this particular area until the inmates get searched, because after every visit, all the inmates have to get searched before they go back to their housing unit. Strip search. So a lot of times they may put them in an auditorium, a gymnasium, and they got all these tables and all these blankets on the floor, and then they got maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 lines of guys standing behind each other waiting to get searched. And then behind the tables, you got a whole row of officers with latex gloves on, and each inmate has to walk up in front of an officer and strip down, butterball naked, one piece of clothing at a time, exposing yourself to the point where they tell you lift your nuts up, turn around, spread your ass cheeks, So just imagine for a male officer that's working the visit, searching 200 to 300 different guys. Just imagine all the genitalia, ass, balls, and everything. I hate to be graphic, but this is how graphic it is. That this man has to watch and look at each man that stands in front of him. Hold your joint up, turn around, spread your ass. You don't think that's humiliating?
Yeah, absolutely. It's inhumane. Like,
even though it's a job and you getting paid good money, in the back, mentally, the mental aspect of it, these dudes probably be going home dreaming about dick and balls. I'm just saying. I mean, think about that. It's like, how could you not? All these naked men in this auditorium, and you got to stand there and search them?
I don't think that they go home dreaming about. I don't think they go home.
Listen. I say that to be the little funny twist on it, but think about the mental ramifications of men, especially if you're a straight man. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a man that might got a little sugar in his tank, he might be enjoying it. But straight men, like, I'm gonna tell you something. It's traumatizing. Think about it. And it's traumatizing, and that's why a lot of correction officers got a lot of mental health issues. A lot of them be burnt out. A lot of them be shot out after being in facilities for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. A lot of them be burnt out.
But, honestly, too, in conjunction with that, they take a lot of verbal abuse as well. And as a man, egotistically, that also plays a role, right? Because if you got people calling you the P word, listen, hear me out. If you got people calling you the P word, the B word, and disrespecting you, you know what I mean, testing you, at some point, you also take that on in addition to all of the other situations that you're dealing with for 16 to 20 hours a day.
Hold on, let me hit you with this. You're talking about verbal abuse. How about, because this feeds into the mental health, because there's a lot of mentally insane individuals incarcerated.
Right.
They're not criminally insane, they're mentally insane. Big difference.
Mhm.
How about, you said you was interested in being a correction officer at one time. How about you work in the unit in your facility? How about this inmate calls you to their cell? Excuse me, Officer Kim, you thinking they need some services or you need to ask you a question. How about you walk up to his cell? How about he throw a handful of shit in your face? He done literally hit on himself in the cell and put it in his hand and threw it in your face. Or took a water bottle, filled it up with piss, and called you to his cell and squeezed the bottle of piss all in your face. How about that for mentally insane? You talking about verbal abuse? These dudes, listen, that work in these facilities deal with this type of, the women and men deal with these
I
type
would
of mentally
literally
insane people.
lose my job that day.
Yes.
I'm
Think
just
about that.
saying.
Think about that. Yes.
I'm just saying. I couldn't.
You remember, you're dealing with a mentally insane individual that's been incarcerated, and as opposed to him being sentenced to a mental health facility to get the treatment that he needs, they sentenced him to a prison.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So what do you expect from this individual? This individual is mentally insane. Like, you have guys that act out, that it gets even more graphic. And I, in order to get the people to, let me tell you something, a lot of people have a misperception about prison. A lot of people in society believe what they see on TV, on these TV shows. They think that's what goes on in prisons. That is absolutely false. It's a fallacy. It's make-believe. Do not listen to what you see on these movies and these TV programs about prison life. You know what I'm saying? But prison life can be very graphic. In an instant, you can see somebody get their throat cut. You can see a guy
Yeah.
get stabbed up while lifting weights in the yard. That's traumatizing. That's traumatizing.
Absolutely, it's traumatizing.
Officers kill guys in there regularly. Come in your cell, 15 officers, 6'6", 300 pounds with riot gear on, spraying mace, dragging you down metal steps, handcuffed behind your back like a pig. You know what I'm saying? It's very traumatizing. And then you're releasing these individuals back into society around normal tax-paying citizens, you know what I'm saying, that are going about their day, minding their business. And next thing you know, this joker's climbing through your window, trying to rob and murder your whole family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you see the
That's
ramifications of not dealing with mental health in incarcerated individuals, how it affects society.
absolutely. So with that said, right, we, said a mouthful: resources, education, advocacy. But this is something that's so ingrained in the USA soil, right? How do you think that this could begin to be rectified? Because I don't see it happening. The good thing about it is the world is now opening up to the conversations of mental health, right? There is now starting to become serious. So hopefully at some point it'll begin to penetrate the criminal justice system. But with it being a $1 million industry to keep people in prison and not send them to mental institutes depending on their crime, how do you see that becoming fixed? I don't really know how they could really even begin to bridge that gap.
That's a great question. That's a great question. And that's a great question. And it's a very interesting question. First and foremost, you have to understand there's no money in rehabilitation. Not
Right.
for them. The money is in recidivism. The money is in reincarceration, because it's what? Job security. As long
Yep.
as guys and women keep going to jail, these people stay employed. You see
Hmm.
what I'm saying? So really, you know, I'm gonna say this. I think America has more people incarcerated than any two countries combined, probably.
Yep.
So incarceration pays in America. Um, a lot of lawmakers, a lot of politicians made their bones on the so-called war on drugs and the so-called get tough on crime. This is what started this whole mass incarceration. So a lot of politicians that were running for office, they was running on a campaign of fear. They was planting fear in the people. Oh, we got to lock these criminals up. Oh, we got to put these drug dealers away. If we leave them on the street, you know, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. They got guns, they dangerous, they violent. So you had guys that had drug habits that was probably doing 6-7 bags of heroin a day. They get caught with 5 bags of heroin. It was locking him up for 10 years like he was a kingpin. That man needed substance abuse treatment. That man needed mental health treatment. That man did not need 10 years of incarceration for 5 bags of dope. That man is not a kingpin. That man was a user. He was out there committing petty crimes to feed his habit, but they was incarcerating him like he was a kingpin for 10 years. You know, this is what flooded the system. This is what caused the breakup of a lot of homes, single parent homes, left a lot of these mothers abandoned out here with these kids. Now you see the mental health ramification, how it trickles down. You see the domino effect now. It not only affects the incarcerated individuals, but the family members of these individuals, the children of these individuals. So this is something that needs to be attacked from multiple fronts. First and foremost, the politicians and the legislators got to get serious about rehabilitation, re-entry, and reintegration. They got to get serious about it in order for that to take place, because nothing is going to happen unless we get some legislation behind. And it starts with the grassroots movements. It starts with a lot of the movements out here that you have going on. You got a lot of good people out here that are fighting on the front lines for these incarcerated individuals, for their incarcerated family members. You know, you got a lot of movements going on. So a lot of people are starting to wake up and starting to realize that mass incarceration is not the answer. You can't lock your way out of mental health. You can't lock up your way out of criminal mischief. You can't lock your way out of the problems of substance abuse.
And
you can't
being locked up only exacerbates an existing mental health issue, because as you previously indicated, there needs to be help, and just putting them in a box and making them sit alone with their thoughts for 23 hours a day is just not conducive to anything. And one thing I could say is you can never escape your mind. So even with that 1 hour that they allot to them, that still doesn't allow them to mentally escape or mentally process what they're being exposed to for 23 hours a day. Human beings are not meant to be locked in cages. Now, I will say some of the crimes that people commit are heinous, right? Absolutely. And I'm not saying let them walk in a flower garden full of roses and beads. And I'm not saying that. But there needs to be a median ground. So a drug dealer, petty theft. I don't think they should be incarcerated with people who were like Jeffrey Dahmers and, you know, people who killed their family members, their children. People like that need to be in their own psychiatric ward on medication with certain professionals who are equipped to handle and deal with those types of incidents. Regular civilian people who put on a correctional officer uniform is not mentally and psychologically equipped, because you don't have to go to school to be a correctional officer, right? You just have to show up and pass the test. So if they're not psychologically prepared for that, that can break people down, and it does break people down.
Well, a lot of them are corrupted. Yeah, listen, a lot of them are corrupted, you know, and that's how a lot of the contraband gets into the facilities. So a lot of the officers are corrupted, and they're part of the problem as well. You know what I'm saying? So you can't expect them to be mental health advocates. You can't expect them to be counselors. They need counseling. They trying to get the hell out the building so they could try to go home and catch their damn wife cheating. You know what I'm saying? They ain't got time to be trying to counsel nobody or help nobody. They could care less about your incarceration or your rehabilitation. You know, you're just a number. You're just a meal ticket. You know, your job security. You know what I'm saying? So the more you go out there and kill and shoot and act crazy, the more he keep coming to work, getting them double shifts, and he could park that big boy out there in the parking lot from all the overtime that he getting. You see what I'm saying? So that's what they care about. That's what their concern is. But again, this has to be attacked from multiple fronts. And they need to allow more access into the prisons. They need to allow more grassroots programs and organizations to have access to these prisoners, to get into their head, to get into their minds. They need to make GED a prerequisite for parole. If you don't get your GED, you don't make parole, because that helps you, increases your chances of being successful in society by 75 to 80%. If you got a high school equivalency diploma or equivalent, you know, the average incarcerated individual is reading and writing on a 4th grade level. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did
Yeah,
know that.
reading and writing on the 4th grade level. So they should make, between the ages of 18 and 35, if you're incarcerated, in order for you to make parole, you got to have your GED. You got to take classes and get your GED. You know what I'm saying? They
I
should
agree.
make that mandatory, not sitting in your
But they're
cell.
not going to. They're not going to, because again, recidivism is what keeps them all employed. So they're not going to promote these people being productive members of society. They're banking on them going out, knowing what they're faced with, knowing that they have a criminal record, knowing that they are reading and writing on a 4th grade level, knowing that when they do get hired at McDonald's or Walmart, they're not going to be able to pay Peter and Rob Paul. Like, they're not going to be able to really take care of themselves, and they know that, and they're banking on that. So them reoffending is what's keeping that mindset of just keep them locked up. Like, they're going to do their crime. We're going to treat them like the animals that they are, and that's just that. And when they go into society, it's no longer our problem. When they reoffend, we'll worry about it then. They're not worrying about trying to make them productive members of society. They're just not.
So
And it's
again,
so
we
ingrained.
got to
Like,
take this fight
again,
to the
I don't
lawmakers.
understand if they begin to fix this.
We got to take this fight to the lawmakers. You got to take this, your argument, to Trenton, to the senators. You got to take your argument to Washington, D.C., in front of Congress. You know, you got to do, because let me tell you something, a lot of these politicians are you know, their mentality is outdated. Their understanding of reality and life is you know, they just don't, they out of touch. They're out of touch with the reality of incarceration, the impact it has on families and individuals. They just don't know. A lot of them been sitting up there in Washington for 40, 50 years as legislators. You know, a lot of them think, you know, $5, six. A lot of them so outdated. Their reality is so outdated. A lot of them think $6, $7 an hour is a workable minimum wage. You know, you
Right.
tell
And I
them
will say this
15,
too.
$20
I
an
will say
hour, they
this.
about to have a heart attack. Oh, you want to give them $15 an hour? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
But you know
they
why
really
that
don't
is
know.
too. Again, like, no, they don't. But especially too, if they're not exposed to this. Like, we're common citizens, right? We're not legislature. We're not living in mansions behind walls and army guards protected. So if they don't have any direct experience with knowing or understanding the circumstances that these criminals, excuse me, not criminals, these well, they are criminals, but you know, people who are locked up, if they don't have direct experience with that, that's not even a consideration in their mind, because that's not their problem. That's not their fight, right? So they'll look at it and just look at it like, okay, well, they're animals, and whatever happens to them when they get locked up happens. It's not something that they consider because they have no
You know when
direct
it you know when
experience
it
with it.
becomes their fight. You know when it gets. You know when it
When
becomes
it
their
becomes
fight.
a
You know when
family
it gets
member
their
or some,
attention.
yeah, when it affects them, when it affects them,
No, yeah, when something happens to one of their family members, when their son gets
right,
incarcerated, gets raped in jail, you know, gets killed in jail, or their son gets 20 years for a petty crime, you know, then they want to become advocates for it. Then they want to change the laws. You know, then they want to put laws on the books. Then they want to bring awareness to it. You know, that's like with any social problems that affect urban communities. It doesn't get the attention of the lawmakers and the policymakers until it directly affects them or their children. You know what I'm saying? Or
right.
whatever the case may be. So, and it's the same thing with
But here's the thing,
incarceration. But
but even with that though, again, because they're lawmakers and legislature and they know people in high places, so a lot of times when their kids do get caught up, if they are facing time, that's how some way somehow it disappears, right? So they're not really going to jail. Like, again, that you do have your certain cases where people are made examples, right? But a lot of these lawmakers, their kids are exonerated from real life, which is why they keep offending until they offend so much where is they really can't do anything but now go to jail because you done burnt every single bridge that they've given you. So it may be something to the point where now they go and kill a family because they were trying to feed a drug habit or something like that. And it's high press and they're going to have to do time. But if it's, little minute things that these people out here do, stealing, petty crimes, right? Their kids are not going to go to jail for that, let alone have a record. You know what I mean? So like the dynamics are different. And it's so many contingencies with the criminal justice system, with lawmakers, with correctional officers. It's just a plethora of issues, and it's disheartening because we live in a very sad world
Right. Well,
where
there are some initiatives. You do have the New Jersey Reentry Program, which is ran by former Governor Jim McGreevey. He had several programs like in Jersey City and Newark and Patterson. When guys get released, they could go there and get resources and stuff like that, get help with employment, referrals because when guys are incarcerated, a lot of times they lose their entire identity. They don't have no birth certificate. They don't have no social security card. They don't have no license. They don't have none of that stuff. They need to, get all those things, all those documents and all that stuff again. When they return back into society, they need to reestablish their identity, who they are. You got a lot of guys never cashed a check a day in their life. You got a lot of guys never filled out an application for a job a day in their life. You got a lot of guys never got an income tax check. All they knew was selling drugs, robbing, stealing. That's all they ever did their entire life. You know what I'm saying? So they got to be exposed to a different way.
It's crazy because I've been told from certain people that sometimes it's easier to just go back to jail because that's what they know. So they'll sometimes purposefully do something to get them back because, again, it's free. You don't have to worry about anything. This is what you're accustomed to out in the real world. It's rough. It's tough, especially if you've been missing for the last right. But if you've been missing for the last 10, 15 years, we've really
let me tell you something. You could go to jail and you get free health care. You could have your whole grill missing. They'll put a whole new grill in your mouth. You can't see, your vision is going. You get brand new state-of-the-art glasses, eye doctor. Any medical issues you get free medication, free medical issues, free insulin if you're a diabetic. You get all of that stuff on taxpayers' dollar. You get 3 square meals. You know what I'm saying? You get to work out, looking good, looking sharp. That's why you see a lot of guys, they flourish better in the prison setting than they do in the streets. You see them on the streets, they be fiend out.
They don't have a choice though. But they really don't have a choice though because.
But listen. Let me make this point.
There's no females. It's no clubs. It's no partying. So like, yeah, if you're locked down 23 hours a day and then now you got these big dudes testing you. Sometimes you're going to go work out. So really, their options. They don't really have a lot of options. But
no. What it is. Some people can only function in a structured environment. See, in prison is a structured environment. Everything is systematic. You wake up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. They got to do count. Breakfast every day at 6 or 6, whenever the breakfast is. Lunch every day at 12. Dinner every day at 5. Everything is systematic. Lights out at 9. Like everything is. Yeah. So you in a structured environment. Like you said, they tell you when to eat, sleep, shit, think, walk, talk. So everything is in a structured environment. Gym every day at this yard. The yard, you go out to work out, basketball. So you're in a structured environment. So it's easy for some people to function in a structured environment where they're being told what to do and they're being herded like cattle. Now you let that individual out in society where you got to make those decisions on your own. You got to get out the bed in the morning to go to work. Nobody waking you up. Nobody telling you, yo, it's 5 o'clock. You got to get up. You got to feed yourself. Ain't no breakfast done for you. Ain't no waffles and eggs and stuff on the table with a hot cup of coffee waiting for you. You got to do all those things on your own. And this is where a lot of people fall at because they don't want that responsibility. They so used to the system taking care of them and providing for them. When they get out here, they frightened at just the idea of having to fend for themselves. It scares them to the core. So yeah, they may go reoffend and commit a petty crime. And guess what? You gonna get that
Yeah,
grill?
but
You gonna get them glasses?
which is why there needs to be a median, right? Not from one extent to the next. It needs to be, where they're able to start fending for themselves and start being, accountable and responsible, and not just everything handed and given, because that is non-conducive to them coming back
But let me ask you a question.
society.
You being a mental health advocate, let me ask you a question. I'm a formerly incarcerated individual. I did 15, 20 years. I just got released. And I'm finding it difficult to readjust out here in society. I'm getting a lot of doors smacked in my face, closed in my face. Things are not happening for me as quickly as I need them to happen. Employment hasn't come as quickly as I need it. I'm not, reacclimating as quickly as I thought I was. I'm struggling in my personal relationships and trying to fit back into society. And I come to you and I'm sitting down. You at a desk and I'm sitting down and I'm just venting to you. Like, yo, listen, like you being a mental health advocate, what can you give me? Like, what information would you impart to me to help me stabilize my thinking and rationalize my thinking and remain calm and not want to go out there and reoffend and be patient in the process? So what do you think that you could give me from your professional or expertise that you think could help me in that, process?
Okay, so for starters, I would tell this person that they're completely valid for everything that they feel, because people need to understand that it's okay to know that they're not okay, right? And to know that this world has surpassed them on so many levels, right? So their train of thought, their thinking, their defeat, their whatever they're feeling, they need to know, number one, that they're not wrong for feeling like that. And people need to understand that you are entitled to feel how you feel, right? But the key to that is understanding and knowing what it is that you feel, right? Because that's how you can begin to mediate the situation. Because if you're just, you gave me a bunch of instances like, oh, I can't get a job, the doors are slamming in my face, this, that, that. But if a person is just angry and just don't know how to go about it, then that'll kind of go a different route. But to your question, I would let them know that they're valid. I would let them know that there are resources available. I would encourage them to continue to be patient, because everything is a process, right? Everything is a process. And I will also let them know that what's meant for them is meant for them. So if these specific doors are closing in your face, that's not the door God had for you, right? Sometimes it builds
Mm-hmm.
humility. Sometimes it builds stamina. Sometimes it builds patience. You never know why these doors are constantly closing in your face. You just don't know. But take note of it so you can learn from it once God unveils the point and purpose of those doors closing. I know me personally, I don't want a job, a person, a mate, put materialistic possessions, anything that's not sent or approved by God, right? So if a door is closing in their face, I would tell them that it just wasn't their path, right? But remain diligent, remain confident, and just know that, because of your mistake, it's going to take you a little longer to get where you're going, but you'll get there. Slow process is better than no process, right? And then I would facilitate the resources. I would give them direction. Okay, so this place has this, and this is what you can do. What do you feel like, that you want to do? And it wouldn't be enough to just do that and send them on. I would stay in contact with them because I would want to check on their minds daily. How are you feeling today? And then when they're having bad days, I would reassure them that this is life. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. We all have them, despite whether you made a mistake and had to pay your debt to society or your regular working class people. We all have them.
Right.
But people need to have genuine and consistent people in their lives to keep motivating them, especially when they've been defeated in such a way. Being in prison and being exposed to all the types of things, that's a whole different animal. So now that they're trying to get reacclimated to society, they need people who have their genuine interest at heart and is going to keep rooting them on and letting them know that this too shall pass. You just got to get beyond it. You know what I mean? So I
Wow.
think the
Wow.
main thing is
Wow.
encouragement.
That's great. You know what? I asked that question and it was several different components on in me asking you that question. Number one, hearing you speak and the things that you pointed out was both empowering, motivating, and I think that would, like, if I was sitting in front of you and I was that individual, I would have felt so much better leaving out from this conversation. I would have felt empowered. I would have felt motivated. I would have had my head up, and I would have been looking forward to, things happening and greater things happening. And
Right.
another point that I want to make, a support system. The reason a lot of people reoffend and fail when they come home from incarceration, a lot of them don't have a support system. Having a support system is very, very vital to your successful reintegration when you come home. Having people that are cheering for you, having people that are motivating you, having people that are showing you resources, telling you where to go, things you could do, and just encouraging you to stay strong and stay focused. That's very, very important. Even having a solid place to stay, or lay your head, because a person coming home, a person being incarcerated a lot of times for 15, 20 years or more, they lost everything. Their mother died, their father died, their older sister dead,
Yeah.
their brother dead, their aunts done moved down to Georgia, their cousins, everybody left, so they got nobody, they got nothing. They coming home to nothing, so they don't have
Right.
resources, they don't have a support system, so they looking for the system to help support them and help guide them and get them where they need to go. You know what I'm saying? So that in itself is depressing, not coming home to a
Yeah.
support system. So you touched
Yeah.
on that. You would have been a support system for that individual. And as minute as you might think it is, it's vital. That information that you just gave would have been vital to that man probably not going out there picking up a gun tonight and shooting somebody in the damn head or robbing somebody. That would have made the
Right.
difference.
Right.
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 And then the last point is, why haven't you put a proposal yet and submitted it to the Department of Corrections for you to go in and be a mental health advocate in these facilities?
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Because they need
I'm
it.
just kidding.
They need it.
Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm ready for whatever. God equip me with what I need. And I
Right.
definitely, I never thought about that. That's definitely something to look, to kind of look at, because again,
Right.
I want to get into schools. I want to get anywhere where there's a lot of people where I can kind of help change their mindset and their perception. And also to encourage, these kids, they're faced with a lot of stuff, social media, and so same thing with the criminals. They're probably like, okay, I'm about to be released, but what am I going to do? So if they have somebody in front of them cheering them, like you said, cheering them on, listen, you got this. You do. Everything is mind over matter. Once you're able to change your wiring, there are no heights that you can't get to. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what this is all about. This is why we're having this conversation, because we need to begin having vital conversations so we can begin to understand each other instead of
Absolutely.
compartmentalizing everything. Oh, you're a criminal, so you're over there. No, we're all human beings. Some people make poor choices, and sometimes it's at the hands of their environment. People are products of their environment, right? And this is
Absolutely.
not to excuse certain behaviors, but this gives reason to why certain things occur. So I think if we start to employ empathy and start listening and start creating safe spaces for people, that people will begin to open up more. Like you said, depending on the kind of advice you get, that could be a matter of life and death for people. Sometimes
Absolutely.
it is. That
Absolutely.
one person, that one word can change everything. And
Because a
people
lot of
need
times
that. And
people
we
be on
have to
the
start
edge.
seeing that in our life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of times
Yeah.
people be
We
on the
have to.
edge. Yeah, a lot of times people be on their last nerve. They be on the edge of about to
Yeah.
go back. Because listen, human nature, or just the nature of any entity, when things get tight and you get backed in a corner, you're gonna go to what you know.
Yes, you
All
are.
right. So this is
Yes,
right.
you
If
are.
this individual is finding it difficult to put bread on the table, to put food in his stomach, to survive, to make a living for himself, he's gonna go back to what he knows. And if that's
Yeah.
putting a gun in somebody's mouth, if that's climbing through somebody's window doing a burglary, if that's selling some drugs on the corner, or whatever it is he needs to do, he's gonna go back to what he knows. And that
Right.
conversation
And
that
I
you
mean,
just
really,
had,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that conversation that you just had may have been the game changer, and that individual saying, you know what, man, and deciding not to go that route again, and staying focused, and you know, putting 10 toes down. So the mental health aspect is very much needed. And let me tell you something. When I was working in the assessment center, one of the things I used to tell a lot of young guys in there, when they used to be feeling down and going through it and all this other stuff, you know what I used to tell them? The worst possible day that you could imagine having on the street. I'm talking about, think about the worst possible day you could have on the street. You was in a car accident, you totaled your car, you you caught your lady cheating on you, you broke up with your lady, you got fired from your job, you know, excuse me. The worst possible day that you could imagine having on the street is better than the best day you could have in a jail. I'll take all of that happening to me and still have my freedom, because as long as you got your freedom, you're still in the game. Listen,
Right.
any day you wake up with breath in your lungs is an opportunity for your life to change. You could hit the lottery, you could become a billionaire, you become a millionaire, anything could happen. As long as you got breath in your lungs and you wake up in the morning, it's an opportunity for something great to happen in your life. But you got to be in it to win it. You got to be in the game. So
Absolutely.
again, as long
Absolutely.
as you got your freedom, your car got totaled, your wife left you, you lost your job. But guess what? Tomorrow you could get another car. The next day you could get another job. And the day after that, you can get another girl. But if you were sitting in jail,
Amen.
listen, being incarcerated is the next best thing to being buried alive. You
I agree.
woke and you
I agree.
conscious, but you in the coffin. You can't go nowhere. You see what's going on, but ain't nothing you can do about it.
Nothing. Nothing. You listen, you've said a lot. You've said a lot. We've covered a lot. I look forward to continuing these types of conversations, and kind of getting direction on how we go about, because it's not enough to just talk about it, right? I'm proactive. I'm proactivity. So if I need to start drawing up, bills, or not bills because I'm not a legislator, but if I need to start writing up proposals or things of this nature, there just so that they are considered human beings as well, then that's what I need to do. But I think that the main part is understanding and having this dialogue. And now that we've had this dialogue, now it's time to become proactive and helping, and or bridging the gap, and or allowing mental health advocates to get in the prison to kind of help them deal with whatever they're dealing with. There's just a whole host of, it's so much balled up in one that I really can't single out anything, right? But I just look forward to continuing these types of conversations, having this type of dialogue, and making sure that we're aware and we're conscious of the things that other human beings are dealing with, which ultimately affects us, whether that be directly or indirectly. So I thank you so much for your time. I definitely want to have you on again. Before we go, is there anything that you would like to, any advice you would like to give, or any last comments?
Yeah, I would just say, anybody, that's dealing with any level of mental health or mental stress, or feeling down, feeling depressed, or going through whatever it is that you're going through, I just would say to you today, to stay strong, stay focused. It ain't how you start, it's how you finish. It can always get greater later. Again, I can't emphasize enough, every day that you wake with breath in your lungs and your health, is an opportunity for something great to happen in your life. So stay focused, stay patient, and those doors will open up, those windows will open up, and those opportunities will come. You know what I'm saying? Just, again, if we need to reach out to somebody, call a hotline, call a friend, you know, call me, call you, you know, and say, hey, listen, you know, you got a few minutes, I just need to talk. You know what I'm saying? It could make a difference between
Right.
life and death, or freedom and life in prison, you know. So,
Amen.
you know,
Amen.
I'll leave you with that.
So, yeah. So we just want everyone to stay encouraged and understand that you are not in this fight alone. We are all fighting with you and rooting for you. So till next time on My Matters. Thank you, Dr. Justice Figueroa. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Peace and blessings.
Likewise.